This is Our People podcast, telling the stories behind South Tyneside and Sunderland NHS Foundation Trust.
Welcome. In this episode we are looking at the work of the radiology teams across our trust. We're joined by Paul Simpson and Dee Sixsmith, who are both experienced radiographers and now help oversee our teams. Paul, would you like to tell us a little bit about your career so far in the NHS and what you're now in charge of?
I'm a diagnostic radiographer by trade. I've been working for the Trust for 15 years since I qualified from university. I trained at Sunderland, so I've been here throughout my entire career. Originally I was a general radiographer, so looking at the plain film department and going up to theatre, working on the wards, that kind of thing. Then I went back to university and did some further training to become what's called an advanced practitioner. So that's a radiographer or another healthcare professional that has undergone further training to take on what is traditionally part of a doctor's role. So in my case it was reporting the x-rays as well as taking them. So I specialise in trauma, bone imaging, for want of a better way of putting it. So looking at when you've come into the emergency department and you've injured yourself, looking at those x-rays and deciding whether or not there is actually something showing as wrong on there. I did that for about 4 or 5 years before I then got my current role, which is the operational manager for the department. So I alongside Dee, look after the day-to-day running of the department, make sure that everything is as it should be and that the service is running in the best way possible, but looking at the future as well, so how we need to develop the service to meet current demand and future demand, looking at the equipment and making sure that that's up to date. Anything that needs replacing is obviously taken through the right processes and done, and just making sure that we can provide the best possible service we can to the patients.
Quite a busy job then.
Yes.
And Dee?
So I currently do the same job alongside Paul, so we're both the operational managers. So as Paul said, this is what we do kind of do on a day-to-day basis. My background is as a radiographer as well. However, I had a slightly different pathway to Paul. I trained in Warrington and qualified in 2006 and worked in Manchester for about 8 years. And then I moved up to the northeast in 2014 to undertake the same course Paul did, to become a plain film reporter, doing reporting on sort of A&E traumas, when you come in, you break your bones, that sort of thing. But before that, I used to do a lot of work in cardiology and interventional radiology. So it's probably an area of radiology that's not known by a lot of people, even within sort of the medical circles. So we work alongside the cardiologists in cardiology, looking at the vessels around the heart. I was really privileged to work as part of the PCI service, which is basically where if you're having a heart attack, we can unblock your arteries there and then. So quite challenging, very poorly patients, but really satisfying because patients come in very, very unwell and go out essentially fine. So that was really, really good fun, for want of a better term.
Very satisfying.
Really satisfying, yeah. Difficult at times, but really, really satisfying when things work out. And then I used to do a lot of work in interventional radiology. So this is a part of radiology where basically we look at anything that's got a blood vessel in it, and we can do loads of weird and wonderful things of opening arteries up or blocking things off. If maybe a tumour's got a blood supply, that if we can stop that blood supply, we'll obviously make that tumour go smaller. It's a huge area, and it's sort of one of the areas of radiology where it's not just diagnosis as well, it's like therapeutic as well as obviously taking the imaging. So that was kind of my former life back in the northwest, and then I moved to the northeast in 2014, did my reporting course, was a reporter for a few years, and then also, as Paul says, got the job alongside Paul in 2019, just in time for the pandemic.
Team ever since. And you've already touched on quite a few different terms and descriptions there. So you've used plain film, and you've talked about cardiology, and you talked about being a diagnostic radiographer. Like, people generally think it's about x-rays and some of our scans. What kind of depth of things do you do? What kind of range of tasks do your department take care of?
So I think we've already touched on that. I think when most people think of radiology x-ray, you think of x-rays, and you think of you fall over and you hurt your wrist and you go to A&E, and then you go and get an x-ray, and then you get a cast put on, and then you get a follow-up. And that's kind of our bread and butter. We do a lot of that, and a lot of plain film x-raying, and I think that's what most people know. And then I think a lot of people know about CT scanning, which, because we use a lot of CT scanning, I think it's probably our biggest demand at the moment, especially with like the recovery. And I think a lot of patients and general population have probably aware of a CT scan. They might have had one or know someone who's been for one. But alongside in radiology, we also do MR scanning. So this is MRI scanning, which doesn't use radiation. It uses magnets to sort of create images. It's really technical and slightly magical in my mind, and it's really good at looking at different things, different parts of the body, different tissues. So we use it for very different things. So some people might get sent for a CT scan, whereas others be sent for an MR scan because it'll be better to show up other things. If anybody's had one, they're usually quite long. It's not a quick exam, and it can be quite noisy because there's a lot of noise around the machine. And then we also have ultrasound, which people kind of link with sort of pregnancy, is where most people know it from. Again, we use it obviously for obstetrics in pregnancy, but we use it for a whole host of other stuff as well. A lot of abdominal work we do. We do some vascular work, so looking at vessels. We also do like musculoskeletal stuff, so I think we call it lumps and bumps. So if there's any sort of a weird lump or bump somewhere, you'll probably get sent by your GP for an ultrasound first, because it's a good way of seeing like what it is and whether we need to do anything else. Again, with ultrasound, we don't use x-rays, so there's no sort of radiation implications there.
And they're relatively quick as well, aren't they? You get quite quick responses, I imagine.
Yeah, I think with ultrasound's probably the one area, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, where actually because it's done by the operator who then does the report as well, so most of our sonographers or our doctors who do ultrasound actually then also do the report, so you get the exam and the report at the same time, whereas if you come for an x-ray or a CT scan or an MR scan, what you'll get is you'll be scanned by the person scanning you, but actually it'll be a specialist doctor who then reports it, so there's a bit of a wait time there. So the turnaround time for actually getting the report for ultrasound is generally a lot better than it is in other areas, just because of the nature of the imaging. What have I missed out?
Yeah, really, I think you've covered most areas, and the only thing I would add is that it's kind of a horses for courses affair. As Dee says, different tests show different things in different ways, so it's a case of we'll send you for the best imaging that we can for whatever it is that we're looking at for you. So sometimes that means that you might have to wait a little bit longer for an MRI scan than going for an x-ray, but actually the amount of information we're going to get from that is so much better that we'll have the ability to see what is wrong, if anything, much easier than doing a different exam.
And how do you decide what the best procedure is, what the best check is? How do you make that decision, or is that made by a clinician and then you pick it up? Or
so the clinicians will see the patient and then make a request, and we always say it's a request rather than an order, because that request comes into radiology and then it's generally looked at by either one of the radiographers, one of the advanced practitioners, or when it comes to things like CT and MR, it's usually a radiologist, and they will look at that clinical history and any other imaging that patient's had and actually decide, is this the best test for this patient at this time? Sometimes when the radiologists are making the report, they might recommend some further imaging, so they might have seen something but actually gone, oh, that we could see this better if you had this other scan or something else.
And we have two hospitals that lots of people know about, but we actually have quite a large service over a wide geographical area. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about how the team works and where they're based and what they offer?
Yeah, so we have, as you say, our two main sites at Sunderland Royal and South Tyneside District General, and they provide the services to the hospital, so that's the emergency departments, all the inpatients, lots of outpatient work as well. But we also have, as you say, community sites dotted around. So we have Palmer's Community Hospital, which we provide plain film and ultrasound imaging from. And we have Horton Primary Care Centre, which is the same, has plain film and ultrasound. Grindon Lane does the same, Washington, and we also have a couple of sites that aren't in use at the moment, but we can use at Bunny Hill and Seaham. And it's really, it gives us that extra capacity, and there isn't a lot of space in the hospital to put more equipment in, and we need more equipment all the time, but it also means that we can bring the diagnostic test a bit closer to the patients. We all know that getting parked on the hospital sites and getting to the hospital sites can be a bit of a nightmare, so actually if we can go out into these community centres and these primary care centres, and do some of the imaging there, it's a much better experience for the patient.
And presumably patients really appreciate the fact that they don't have to make that journey, perhaps when they're not feeling too good.
Yes, absolutely, and you know, just the ease of actually being able to pull up, park for free at most of these centres, walk in, have your X-ray and walk straight back out again without actually having to fight your way through the hordes at the hospital. Sit in a busy waiting area that, you know, you probably will end up being delayed because an emergency will come in. You know, it just makes it a much better experience for the patient.
We also run something called Community Diagnostic Centres, which people might not have heard of. Do you want to give us a little bit more detail about what they are and what they do?
So this is a new national initiative which basically builds on what I was just saying about taking the diagnostic tests out into the community and bringing the testing closer to people. So rather than bringing people to the test, it's taking the test to people. So this came on the back of a national report that came out a couple of years ago that says to improve diagnostics as a whole, so not just imaging, all diagnostics. So this includes endoscopy and things like ECGs and echo exams. We need to obviously provide more capacity, provide more of these tests, but do it in a different way from how it's already been done. So one thing that we learned during the pandemic was actually it was really difficult to separate outpatient activity from, you know, the acute inpatient activity. So this is kind of what led to a lot of work stopping in the first phase of the pandemic, was because we didn't want to bring people into the hospital where we knew that there was COVID infections and the risk was higher for what is relatively routine outpatient exam. So, you know, it was deemed safer at the time to postpone them or cancel them outright. Well, in future we need to learn from that and actually say, right, well, we'll have what we'll class as a cold site, so one that is COVID secure, isn't in the middle of, you know, the ongoing issues that the hospital are facing, but that means that we can actually keep on those diagnostics. So as I said, this is a national initiative. Different places are doing it in different ways. Some are using mobile vans to go into supermarket car parks. You know, some places are building centres in like shopping malls and things. We're doing it slightly different at South Tyneside and Sunderland, because we already have a number of vans that we're using to increase our capacity. So we're just going to focus them down into an actual purpose-built building, which is being built at the South Tyneside site at the moment. So it's a £10 million facility that we're building in partnership with Alliance Medical, which is going to give us additional CT and MRI capacity in the trust, and mean that, you know, yes, it is on hospital site, and there will be, you know, some of the issues around parking and things, I'm sure that there are in other places, but actually it's a dedicated building. It's got its own front door. You don't need to come into the hospital, and actually, you know, it's purpose built for this kind of activity. So, you know, it's just going to make the outpatient imaging much better for the patients in the long run, and that they don't have to go to a van in the car park.
It will be much nicer than the van in the car park. We see this very close to where we're based in the communications team, and it's been really good to see the building take shape. It's now at pace, the roof's on, and I think we're looking forward to welcoming patients towards the end of the year, which will be really good. Is there a good buzz about it among the team?
Yeah, I mean, we're really excited to get this extra capacity online, you know, to help speed up diagnostics for our patients. We recognise that our waiting lists aren't necessarily where we want them to be at the moment, and, you know, we do want to bring them down into a more reasonable time frame, but we need more scanners to do that. You know, national demand for radiology is increasing year on year, and we've been asked to provide 120% of our 2019 activity nationally to try and, you know, cope with the recovery post-pandemic to make sure we get back onto track. But obviously that means that we need more scanners to scan people on it. It's not just a case of, you know, we'll just squeeze more people through. We can't shorten the exams. You know, we still need to provide high quality imaging to the patients. So it's how actually do we get more patients through the door and more patients examined. So one of the easiest way, obviously, is to put more machines in. So this is costly, the staffing implications as well. Nationally, we need 4,000 additional radiographers over what we've got now, and that was also identified in the Richards report I was talking about earlier. So there's lots of challenges ahead, but we see that personally as an exciting challenge that, you know, we need to think outside the box, look at how we've done things traditionally and how we can do things differently in the future to improve radiology services across the board, not just at South Tyneside and Sunderland, but nationally. And, you know, Dee and I are very heavily involved in regional conversations about how we can manage this. It's not just South Tyneside and Sunderland that are having these issues. It is a national problem, but it's also, you know, an opportunity for us to improve services and not just do things the way that have already been done.
There was already demand for our services before the pandemic, and then that's really made a very focused situation because we've got people waiting to come in. What are the reasons for demands on your service? Why they're rising? Do you know why that might be? Is it because more are being ordered? Because the system's getting better? What do you see the reasons for the demand rising is? Because we know it's predicted for the years ahead.
Yeah, I think it's been rising year on year, hasn't it? And I think we've never really, as a department, as a service, we've never been sort of at the forefront. And I think with the Mike Richards report, I've got the official title, but it's very long.
We'll link to it. It's fine.
It's fine. But it's sort of shone a light on it, and then I think but I think COVID's really made that apparent as well. We've got, we're all living a lot longer. The advances in science are moving on fantastically. You had a cancer diagnosis probably even 10 years ago, but certainly 20 years ago, and actually it was sort of, you had cancer and that was it. Whereas now there's so many things that they can do and that the specialties can do outside of radiology that actually we need more and more and more imaging. And it's not just imaging to make that diagnosis, it's then the follow-up for that. So, if you go for some treatment, previously you would have had one CT scan and then it might have been some palliative treatment, and that would be sort of your imaging sort of journey. Whereas now you come for that treatment, then you go and have some surgery, or we do something as a hospital, and then you come for a follow-up scan at 3 months, at 6 months, and then maybe every 6 months or every year. Going forward, and then you live for another 20 years. So we've gone from one scan to maybe 25 scans, and I think the advances in our technology within imaging, so we're seeing so much more. We're seeing so much more on the CT scans, on the even with plain film, like the things you see now from probably when we trained, when it was bits of film, because I'm that old.
I am too.
And it's so much more technically advanced than it was.
So you see so much more when it's even with the MR scans, with the ultrasound scans, with the plain film, with everything, the imaging quality. I suppose it's like, if you think about your cameras, your phones, what we used to be able to do in your phones when phones first came out to now what we do on them, it's just moved on massively. If you think about that from an imaging point of view, it's the same thing. Before we might have seen a vague shadowy lump, and now we see exactly what it is, and so we've got a better idea of how to then treat it. But it does just mean more imaging,
more scans, and we're trying to get as many people through as we possibly can. So what is the team doing to try and get as many of our patients through this as they?
Our teams have been amazing, haven't they? They were amazing through the pandemic, all just pulling together. We are, without sounding really cliched, quite a good family, and everyone does pull together when things get hard. And the pandemic definitely showed us that. I think we were really proud of our teams at that time, and still are. But actually the recovery's probably been harder, because there's just, we're asking more and more and more, and we've been asking for 18 months now. But we are really lucky that we've just had a new scanner at South Tyneside, a new CT scanner, and whilst that was being built we had a box scanner on site. So we've actually got 2 scanners at South Tyneside now. So hopefully we're going to be staffing that, because again, having the equipment, as Paul said, doesn't necessarily mean you need to have the staff as well. So we're finding some staff to staff that, so hopefully we're increasing our capacity through that. Our staff are doing extra lists and are working really, really hard to put things on to sort of help out and get more patients through. And then I think with the IDC, the Imaging Centre at South Tyneside, coming online, hopefully by the end of the year, that'll make a big difference.
We've been looking at how we can manage our recruitment moving forwards as well. So, we have these short-term pressures, but we need to look at the future, and that's what T and I have been focusing on for the last 12 months. So we're working in partnership with one of the local universities, Sunderland University, to see if we can develop a further radiography course, so we can train more radiographers in universities.
And presumably keep them in the region as well.
Yeah.
One hope is that, because of geography, where Sunderland and South Tyneside are, we were in the middle of our 2 university providers, down at Teesside in Middlesbrough and Cumbria over in Carlisle. We have students from both of them, but it means that we do get students from outside of our area quite a lot, so we'll spend 3 years training them, produce really good radiographers, because I think we're quite good at training radiographers.
Yeah, we are.
At South Tyneside in Sunderland. But then they move back closer to home, which I cannot blame them for. Everybody would prefer to be working closer to home, I'm sure.
Apart from me and you.
Well, yeah.
Well, I'm going to touch on that because neither of you are from the northeast. You're from the other side of the country. So, Dee, where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Wigan.
From Wigan, and you're originally from
Just outside of Barrow in South Cumbria.
Oh, right, okay. And we have a campaign here in the northeast called Find Your Place. And if anybody's listening and they want to give it a quick search, the website's really, really good. And it's all about bringing in medical professionals into the northeast, but also keeping them here because it's really lovely. So what kind of brought you to the northeast, if you don't mind me asking, and what's kept you with us?
For me, it was a job opportunity. So I moved up for the job, the reporting course, to do the job. Essentially, if I'm being totally honest, thought I would come do the course, do a couple of years and then go somewhere else, and totally fell in love with the northeast, fell in love with the coastline. Have now met my other half and had a child and bought a house, so I'm not going anywhere. You're all stuck with me. I think my friends in Manchester kind of expected me to move back, but actually it's just such a beautiful part of the world. The people are amazing. You can't ask for nicer people. And I think I was just kind of a bit overwhelmed by genuinely how lovely everybody is, and everyone just speaks to you. It's very different.
Very friendly.
Yeah, very friendly. It's very much like where I grew up, but probably less so sort of city centre Manchester, where less people kind of probably touch in that big city situation. But yeah, I just love it here. Love my job. Love where I'm working. Love the people I work with.
I was going to say, you touched on that earlier, that you know, while you might be dealing with some really serious situations, it can be a fun job, presumably because you pull together and you keep each other going, and you're all, you know, working to get that brilliant result for the patient.
I think anywhere in the NHS is quite like that, isn't it? I think radiographers, we always say this, we're kind of a bit of a niche set of people. We're all quite similar, even though we're all quite different, if that makes any sense.
You found your fellow...
Yeah.
You feel at home with people.
And I don't know, I think Paul will agree, a lot of my friends are radiographers. In fact, I can probably count on one hand how many of my friends aren't radiographers.
The same.
Yeah, we tend to all just gravitate towards each other, and we do tend to get on. I think we've all just got a slightly weird outlook on things and mindset.
Yeah, I think we've all got quite similar personality traits. And for me, the things that attracted me to radiography, one, I get to help people, but I know my personality that nursing probably isn't for me. I get very frustrated with some of the things that the nurses have to do, and hats off to them. I certainly couldn't do the job, and my mum's a nurse, so I've seen firsthand the toll it takes nursing, and I don't think I could do that. But I still wanted to go into a health profession and to help people. But actually, I'm a bit of a geek at heart as well, and I think most radiographers probably are.
So do you enjoy working with the technology?
Exactly. So that the fact that the technology is being updated every year, that everything's changing, is really quite a technical job. It was the other thing that attracted me into radiography. And I think you see a lot of that in radiographers, that we're all a little bit nerdy, geeky. But actually we really care about people as well, so it just means that we all come together as Dee said before, a bit of a family rather than just work colleagues. For me, I trained at Sunderland as a student radiographer back in the day, so I've actually been here for over 17 years now since I started as a student. And when I qualified and was looking for my first job, got offered a number of jobs around the country, but when I got offered one at Sunderland, it was easy for me to say yes, because actually I already knew the people, and the people were absolutely fantastic, and that's kind of what attracted me into the department first of all. But similar to Dee, my original plan was to get a couple of years of experience under my belt and then move on to maybe bigger and better things, was my thought. But actually we do so much at South Tyneside and Sunderland already that there isn't really bigger and better out there. I know a lot of trusts, particularly in the region, will think that they are bigger and better than us, but we do all sorts. So as Dee said before, we have the cardiac catheter labs where we treat people in the middle of having a heart attack. We have interventional radiography, radiology, where we can go in and fix blood vessels and things. We have integrated theatres where there's an X-ray machine built into the theatre, and we can actually use imaging during operations. We do a lot of intraoperative imaging actually for orthopaedics as well. We have urology, we have rheumatology. There's so much going on in South Tyneside and Sunderland actually for a radiographer. You can
keeps you on your toes, keeps you challenged, keeps you interested.
Yeah, and absolutely. But it means that no two radiographers have the same job either, because there is such a wide range of things that we can do. You can come in and you can specialise. So I've got friends and colleagues that I train with at the same time, and none of us have the same job anymore,
We're all radiographers, but none of us actually do the same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly, because we've all gone down slightly different career paths. So, it's, as I was saying before, it's horses for courses for the patients and the exams that they have. But it's the same for the radiographers because, it's so varied. You can do nearly anything that you want.
So you might have set out to do one role and actually you find yourself doing something different because that's what interests you or you find yourself good at.
Absolutely, and I had no intention of going into management at first. When I first qualified, I actually wanted to be a CT radiographer, and I've been nowhere near CT since I qualified because my career took me in a different direction. And actually, I found new things, and when I qualified, when de-qualified, advanced practice was a thing, but it wasn't a huge thing. And actually, it's growing year on year because there's a radiologist shortage as well as a radiographer shortage. So why not upskill that workforce?
And I think you're a prime example, as there's a few staff who work with us, who trained with us and have moved up the ranks. Luke's another prime example, someone who came in and has literally worked all the way up, and now he's a reporting radiographer as well. But like the same as you, Paul, you've come as a student, you've got your degree, you've done your postgraduate, you're now sat in doing our job. Actually there is that progression there that we can take in almost homegrown staff and work with them and try and get them, and I think that's something we're both, as advanced practitioners, we're both really passionate about, is actually like upskilling the talent we've already got. We work with some really great people, and not everybody wants to go and be a reporting radiographer or wants to do intervention or management or whatever, but actually if we've got that opportunity for people to do this, it's a fantastic pathway that people can follow. We're really both champion advanced practice quite a lot.
Yeah, but we're also applying that mindset to our recruitment issues in general. So we've started new schemes within the department to try and upskill our homegrown talent, not just the radiographers into advanced practitioners, but our support workers into radiographers, because we've got this team of really excellent support workers who have worked in the department for a long time, know the department inside out, know what the job entails inside out, can look after the patients with their eyes shut because they're all excellent at what they do. But actually, why not use that talent and upskill them and train them to be radiographers? So that's what we're doing at the minute. So we're working in partnership with Teesside University with some apprenticeships. So we've got 2 apprenticeship schemes on the go in the department at the moment. We've got our support worker to what's called an assistant practitioner, who is essentially an unqualified radiographer. So they take the imaging, but they don't have the registration that a radiographer would have. But we're also upskilling our existing assistant practitioners to become radiographers using apprenticeships as well. So that's one of the things we're looking at to try and increase the workforce. But we've also been really fortunate that we've worked closely with our workforce development colleagues in the trust and set up the Get Into Radiography scheme as well, which is designed to attract people in kind of college leavers into working in the NHS. So we bring them in, give them a job as a support worker, give them all the training we would give to a support worker normally to teach them what we do in the department and how to look after the patients. But we also put them on a healthcare diploma course as well, that then gives them the qualifications they would need to progress into doing the apprenticeships if that's the route that they want to take. So actually that means we can take local people, local college leavers, bring them into healthcare and then start upskilling them through the ranks and then training them as qualified healthcare professionals. Because
what does it take to become a radiographer? What are you looking for when you're taking people on, or if somebody's listening to this and thinking, I wonder if this is a career for me, what do they need to set them on that initial path? And you've also talked about support work, so is there a kind of, what is the, I don't know whether it would be progression or what's the kind of order of careers, what do you have to go through?
So, I mean, for either role, be it a support worker or a radiographer, I think the primary thing that you need to be able to do is look after people. That's what we're all here for at the end of the day, is to look after patients, and we all do it slightly differently. The nurses will look after them in one way, the physios looking after them in a different, and radiographers in a third. But we're all here for the patient, and that's the thing that is really key. And it's difficult to teach actually. You've either got the personality type where you are a caring person that will go above and beyond to look after somebody else, or you're not. Not having that personality trait isn't necessarily a bad thing, and there's lots of careers out there, but probably healthcare isn't the best route for those people. But once you've got that, you come into the professions. Again, I keep saying it, but it's horses of course. There's so many different professions in the NHS that you can go into and use that caring ability to then actually fit in with what you want to do. So as I said, radiographers tend to be a bit geeky, physios tend to be a bit sporty, OTs tend to be a bit crafty, don't they? And
being very generalising here, but essentially, we are all a little bit geeky.
Yeah. But do you need that kind of interest in technology and how things work? And
I'd say it's an interest. So my sister's a radiographer as well.
Oh.
is in fact she's a reporting radiographer in the northeast. She'll hate me now. So I almost followed her into radiography, to be honest, because she's older than me, a lot older than me.
Should we give her a shout out? Where does she work?
She works at North Tees, and she's called Helen Stewart, and she is a plain film reporter, and she's very good. And I would like her to come work for me, but she won't.
We can keep trying.
Yeah, we keep trying. No, but she's going to kill me, honestly. She would honestly, hand on heart, say she's not very technically minded from a technology point of view, but she's got the ability, the interest in the imaging, so the interest in the sort of looking at the images, and she's learned the technology side of it that goes along with it. So is a really good radiographer because she does have that technical side, whereas I think you're probably even more geeky, Paul, because you really like the technology, and we do sometimes joke that it's Paul from IT because he's really good at helping us all out. But I'd say a lot of the radiographers are like the imaging and the technology when it comes to the imaging things, but you don't necessarily need to know how to do a 4-page, 4-page PowerPoint presentation and know what you don't need to know all that to come in. We can teach you about the technology as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's having that interest,
yeah,
I think.
We can definitely teach people how to do radiography, how to be a radiographer, but we can't teach them the caring side of it. They would have that from the start. But as I was saying, there's just so much right in healthcare that actually, if you've got a slight interest in anything, then the career's out there for you.
Great stuff. What do you both love about the job? What gives you the buzz?
I think I've always said what I love about doing radiography is just meeting people, talking to people. As you can probably tell, I quite like chatting.
That's an essential skill if you want to deal with patients every day.
It's find out about people's lives, and just, even though you get a tiny little snippet, don't you? Generally, we're not really like the nurses on the wards or we don't deal with our patients for a long time. We deal with a lot of patients for a short period of time in most parts of our profession. But you can find out so much in such a small amount of time, just chatting to people, sort of helping people from that side of it. But yeah, no 2 days are the same. Every day there's something different, there's different challenges. You will literally have no idea what you're going to walk into, but in a good way. It's not mundane, it's not boring. You might do the same, you might do chest x-rays all day, or you might do hands and feet x-rays all day, but actually every single patient will be completely different that you're seeing, and every exam is completely different. And you just get into work. I think one of the big things for me for radiography was getting to work on my own, like independently, but having that team support. So the way a lot of our imaging modalities are set up is we have like lots of rooms, so you'll have maybe 2 CT scanners off a certain work spot, and we have the same in MR at Sunderland, where there's 2 MR scanners, but the staff are in the same place. So and our plain film rooms are set up like that. So you go into the room and you're working maybe on your own or with one other member of staff, but if there's any queries or issues, you've got the rest of that team there to support you. And I think that's for me, it's really nice to be part of the team, but you also get to go out on your own and do your own thing. But yeah, just every day is different, and I just helping people, it's just nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I like the challenge that every patient is different as well. I mean, it's a bit of problem solving for me, and that's kind of what I like. And that, as Dee says, you can be doing chest x-ray after chest x-ray, but every patient is slightly different. You've got to do what you're doing slightly differently for that patient to make sure that you get the best quality imaging you can. So the textbooks will say that you stand your patient in a certain position, and you put your x-ray tube in this place and you point it in at this angle. But actually, most patients can't do that because not everybody's textbook, particularly in a hospital when you've got little old ladies coming in and they're curled up in a ball on the trolley, and you think, well, how on earth am I going to start getting hip x-rays on this person? So actually, there's a lot of problem solving involved in the job as well, and that's what I like, and it's that satisfaction of actually, you've worked through this problem, you've done what you need to do to get the best quality imaging you can, and then that's going to go on and help this patient.
Great. You've talked about some of the challenges there with patients. Is that what you look for in your staff as well, is to have how to bring the best out of the patient to get the best results, get the best scans, and also presumably just to be nice and make it a good experience for them?
Yeah, I think that, like you said before, personality and being able to have that care inside of you is really helpful. I think the problem solving comes with experience, and we find that a lot with our students. Sort of they come in and doing the quote unquote easy patients, you know, the able-bodied patients who are walking in, they don't have a problem with, but you start putting those challenges in and they do start to find it more difficult. But then there's a wealth of experience in the people that they're working with, and people who've done this job for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. In some cases, Barbara Bell, what is it? 51 years.
Where does she work?
She works at South Tyneside at the moment. She's retiring next month. I'm absolutely devastated. But yeah, you know, there's so much experience that people can pass down, and that helps you then do that problem solving and work around things. You might see, you know, Paul might do something one way and I might do it slightly differently, and the staff can pick up on that and be like, oh, actually, I'm going to try that next time. Or, you know, and again, it goes back to that, it's like teamwork. I might be struggling with a patient in a room and I might say to Paul, oh, you know, what do you think of this? How would you do it? And it's sort of that idea sharing quite a lot.
And it's presumably quite hard to juggle those tasks of dealing with the patient but also doing the technology. Does that come with time?
Yeah, I think that comes with time.
Yeah, I mean, I always liken it a bit to driving a car. You know, when you first start driving a car, like, you don't know what to do when, you're really concentrating on what you're having to do and press the buttons at the right time. But once you've been driving for a few years, it's kind of almost muscle memory and you don't really necessarily think about it as much. But, you know, you go to reverse around that corner to turn around, you're not going to do it in the way that you were taught, because that corner isn't, you know, a textbook corner either. And radiography is exactly the same. So you might be doing that chest x-ray, it's not the same way that you were taught, but you're just doing it, but you're not actually necessarily thinking about it either. You know, it's that experience and that skill that the radiographers have to look at that patient and make a snap assessment and do what they need to do, while also chatting about the weather or, you know, what was on the TV last night, you know, that kind of thing.
What do you think comes next for radio? Like, what's next for radiography?
It's difficult to say. The technologies are advancing so fast all the time. I think the next big thing on the horizon for radiology seems to be AI, so artificial intelligence.
Right.
So there's already companies out there that are using, you know, computer programs to help kind of streamline the process a little bit. So as Dee said, you know, the reporting process is quite a long, involved one, and actually sitting and looking at a CT exam which might have 1,500 images in it, and that's pretty average for a CT exam these days, you know. Somebody's got to sit for it and look at every single one of those images at some point. Actually, we can use AI to kind of point us in the right direction. I'm not personally convinced they're going to take over the role of a radiologist entirely. Although
you need that human element.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I think, you know, some people do see that as a future, that actually computers will just start reporting images. I don't personally think that's what's going to happen or necessarily the best way forward. But I think as a stratifying tool that says, actually, you know, Mrs. X has had her CT scan today, actually I think you need to look at this first because there's possibly something on it, whereas Mr. Y, he can wait a week because his looks relatively normal. I think that's really exciting, and actually that, you know, we can focus our most valuable resource, our staff, where it's needed soonest.
And Dave, what are you looking forward to?
I had everything. I'm always very excited about most things. I think we're in a really, really exciting phase with post-recovery from COVID. I think as a department we've got a little bit more recognition from the Trust and from the wider world. I think with the Richards report, it's definitely from a governmental point of view has really shone a light on imaging, and we're really utilising that to sort of go forward and get, you know, new equipment, more staff, more training, like schemes and different things like that. I think within radiology, the big thing is we're very much a service, so we have to react to other people. So if NICE decide that we're going to start doing such a scan for a certain type of patient, then we have to sort of almost react to that. So we're very much, every day is sort of planning for something that we don't know what's going to happen. We, as much as we look after our service, we very much react to all the other specialties. You know, if cardiology needs something, or whether urology needs to start doing different scans or different things, we kind of have to fit that in. So it's just exciting, just trying to make sure we can keep up with the demand and do the best by our patients, really.
And we'll be looking to welcome new staff as time goes on to boost the team, and that will only further our work as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And I think we need to give a shout out to our international recruits as well. Mm-hmm. So we've recently taken on 11 international radiographers who have come from all over the world to come and work with us, which I think is, you know, it's absolutely terrifying for them, you know, coming to a strange country and uprooting their entire lives to come and work somewhere else. But you know, it's such a valuable resource for the NHS international recruitment, and it's got to be done in a safe and ethical way. We don't want to be robbing Peter to pay Paul. We don't want to take staff and create issues in other countries. But actually, we know there are countries out there that have surplus of certain staff groups, so why not work with them to try and bring them into where our gaps are? But it's just a huge thank you to the ones that have come to us already, because they're already making a huge difference to the teams. But yeah, it's absolutely something that I would never do, because it's just a terrifying prospect.
And we couldn't have really chosen anywhere more welcoming or a better place to be.
We tried to be, and I think we moved over from the west and stayed.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that the pull and the draw and the thing that made us stay will hopefully make them stay and set down roots and actually enjoy their life working with us and in Sunderland and South Tyneside as well, because we love it up here.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Not a problem.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of our People podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and check out our other stories. Hit subscribe to keep up with the latest and catch up with what we've been up to on our Twitter, Facebook and Instagram pages. Just search for our name.